Hi and welcome. My name is Cindy Crum, and today I'm hosting the MobileMoxie Marketing Musings Core Update Roundtable. Super excited about this conversation because we've got three amazing experts with us, Dr. Pete from Moz, Aleyda Solis from Remoters.net, and Lily Ray from Path Interactive. These are all really well-known, well-spoken experts who've also written and researched about the most recent core update, which launched on May 4th. And this was recorded on May 29th. So let's get into it.
So hi to everyone and welcome to all of you. This is the first MobileMoxie Round Table where we have a couple amazing guests of honor, and then everyone else is, of course, another kind of guest of honor. We're happy to see you all here. Today we're going to be talking about the core update and what people's experiences and research has shown. We are recording this, so if you have to drop off, don't worry. We'll be publishing it on YouTube and the MobileMoxie blog later. Rules of the road are be sure to mute yourself if you're not talking, so that we don't have echo issues, and it's fine to ask questions to the group or to specific people. It's even fine to disagree, but you just have to be respectful. We want to have an interesting, positive conversation and hear what everyone's thoughts are. And with that, I'm going to switch slides. Oh, Michelle just showed up. Yay. Okay, so we're just going to keep admitting people as they come, but these are the guests of honor for today's core update discussion because they've written about core updates and published some good stuff. So why don't you guys go in the order that's on this slide, and just introduce yourself and tell everyone, about yourself and maybe your favorite ice cream flavor.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Lily Ray. I'm the Director of SEO at Path Interactive, an agency here in New York City. So been doing SEO for about 10 years now, lead the team between New York and Nashville. Right now, just doesn't even feel like we have offices, but that's okay. And kind of specialize lately in like core updates and recovering from core updates. Been doing a lot of projects lately to help clients with that, particularly as it relates to like EAT. And I've also been doing a lot of analysis about who's being impacted by the updates. So been publishing some content around that, which Cindy links to here. So
yeah, you've published a lot. Some old updates, but also I did some old stuff for flavor, so we could compare and contrast.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay, Dr. Pete.
Hey, I'm Pete Myers from Moz. Technically, I'm the marketing scientist. I work mostly with product and marketing teams with Moz core product. And I'm trying to survive with the 7 and 9-year-old at home and homeschooling, and this also on our last day. Hopefully you won't hear them, but you might.
It's okay if we do.
And yeah, I've been eating a lot of Heath Klondike bars and Chaga pretzels. I've gone through more of those than I want to say.
All right, Aleyda.
Hello, I'm Aleyda Solis. I'm an international SEO consultant. I am based in Spain. I'm usually traveling a lot all the time, but since the lockdown is crazy, I have spent more than I have ever recall since forever at home, and I'm actually enjoying it. So I'm very looking forward to share with you today. I handle clients directly myself from all over, and I have been able to see a few different type of patterns across countries too. So I'm very looking forward to share with you this type of things.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're going to jump right over to the first question, which is, of course, winners and losers. This is what everyone wants to know. And Lily and Dr. P both wrote specifically about winners and losers, and Aleyda, yours was kind of more global. So let's start with Lily. And tell us, in general, what did your research find, and how has it changed since the update and since you published?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the patterns that I saw, like when I published, it was maybe 3 or 4 days after the update happened, but the upticks or the declines that we were seeing then have been pretty consistent. Some of the sites that actually kind of saw recoveries are now seeing even more extreme recoveries over the past week or two. And as far as like who it's affecting, it's been, for me at least, from what I've seen, a lot of the same categories that have been affected by the last several core updates. So a lot of like your money, your life type websites. So health and medical, financial, things like drug rehab and natural medicine, and news also was something that was affected really heavily this time, as well as user-generated content. So I published a tweet last weekend, I believe, in which I discovered, and I think a lot of people had already been talking about the fact that like Pinterest, a lot of different international Pinterest domains saw like huge increases in visibility. So that's what I've seen so far.
All right, Dr. Pete, how does that match up with what you found?
Yeah, so I did a whole new way of looking at winners and losers, and so the problem with that is I can't compare it to any of the other ones I did before. So that's the good and bad. Yeah, we were looking at kind of historical changes. We did see that Pinterest jump, a pretty big one, like 40% in our data. Still not sure. I know Google's kind of gone back and forth on that. I think one thing, I tried to do an analysis, I didn't publish it, looking at how closely the core updates relate to each other, like which sites move, and do they move across more than one update? And the truth is, not much. So I mean, I think there's huge, like, to speak to what Lily Ray said, I think there's huge like topical and categorical relationships, but this idea that like it's the same sites over and over, there's a tiny bit of that. But really, what we saw was more that, you know, the June core update is most correlated with the most recent core update. I mean, there's just that time factor. So I'm not seeing a huge relationship of like this site just keeps getting hit and hit and hit. We see it anecdotally, but we're not seeing a big pattern. The one thing that I think is hard to tease about, but that's most interesting about this one for me, June, I said the June core, it's not June yet, the May core update, is there's this pattern of sites, like big winners were Google Play and the Apple App Store, for example. And Grubhub took a loss. There's some patterns of sites that kind of moved that seem like they would be affected positively or negatively by COVID and by search behavior changes. But these weren't changes over time. These were changes that happened mostly in the span of 2 or 3 days. And so I think the thing that's interesting to me, but that's really hard to pin down, is how much of this came out of, did Google tweak something because of what they saw with search behavior changes after COVID, or did something about search behavior changes trigger machine learning inputs or retraining that happened? But it wasn't like, well, obviously we've seen huge traffic changes over the last month, but this wasn't like their rankings declined over a month. It was like, boom, they jumped or they declined, and they're so conceptually correlated with like businesses that seem like they're getting more search traffic or less, or more engagement or less, that I really wonder about that. And it's easy to speculate. It's kind of hard to pin down.
Aleyda, does this fit with what you're seeing? And I know you look more at international, non-US sites. Is it?
Yeah, it did. So, for example, in my case, I like in the past, for example, some previous core updates have affected industries like where I have clients or marketplaces, for example, that have been affected in the past. Not this time. This time, as I saw quite a few news-related websites that were ranking very well for many topics that were related to health advice, financial advice. These were news generic media sites that had specific subdomains or subdirectories sections regarding these topics. When you went and checked, you could very well why it was not because, of course, they are covering these topics, they are not experts, but moreover, the typical too many ads, not the best experience from a format, UI perspective, etc. Right? So you could tell right away, like, yeah, definitely they shouldn't necessarily be the top players for this type of queries that are quite sensitive. And then on the other hand, I have a client that is in India for the financial sector. But this is the thing. This is a very, like, is an invested startup. It's a very top player there. And they have heavily invested in resources, really good content, good experience in general. And they were a rank for some top, very broad type of queries. and the players that are around them. Realistically, it's not that they provided a better experience, they were not more relevant or not more popular. However, the domains that are around them were far more established in time, much more authoritative overall in the industry, very traditional industry there. And then on the other hand, my guess also is that many of the links that these players had were not necessarily more in volume or better in quality, but yes, they had, for example, links coming from banks and financial institutions from the country, things like that the startup didn't yet. So it was funny to see that the difference in trend in that particular case, because it was not an on-page problem, right? But you could tell that this had more to do with link-based profile type of authority type of signals.
Awesome. So is there anyone else who's on who wants to share their experience, agree or disagree, or have a different perspective that they want to share, something that they've seen?
Sure, I'll speak. This is Alan Rabinowitz from SEO Image. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So basically, I do a lot of reputation management, and I've been in doing the reputation management. We see sometimes we're going against news sources, and I've seen a lot of pluses from posts dating back to 1998 popping up, and these are usually news-oriented, sometimes not always favorable, sometimes criminal in some cases. I'm seeing that got a big pickup, and I haven't looked at too with Report and old sites that typically we look at in reputation management, but the news sites are the ones that I'm definitely seeing got a nice pickup. So I saw Wired, one article is from 1998 on Wired popping up into number 4 from number 9. I almost had it off page 1 from some of the work that we were doing, and then I saw it pop to number 4 during an update, and I was like, wow, this is not something I'd expect to see for the age of the article even, and all the new news coming in. And we were hitting and triggering news factors in the element, and we were just starting to wonder if there's also some kind of negative impact in what Google considers the SERPs. So, by that I mean, do they require something negative always be there? Should we fake a negative piece and see what happens?
Oh, wow. Or maybe something just got reset and the signals have to rebuild? What do you guys think?
It's interesting, Alan. This is Lindsay. I've seen something like that with reputation management client too. Just a really old post popping up from a third tier sort of news source onto the first page out of nowhere, and it's sticking there since the update. But you know what? I hadn't even related it to this core update. Sometimes these things pop in and then they pop back out, but I've seen that too. Something really strange. It has no new links, hasn't had any attention or value pointed at it in a decade, yet here it is popped right in. So I can mirror that finding.
Yeah, well, the one thing I've also been wondering too is whether, because we, SEMrush and all the tools that we use track backlinks, but they don't track any links coming from tweets or social media shares or Facebook. So sometimes I wonder if some of these things are getting hit from that. In this case, I saw nothing new. I didn't see anything. I went through Twitter, did searches, site commands, and everything, and couldn't find anything that correlated to that specific piece in Twitter or Facebook. And I don't really feel like this person's being attacked from someone, that they're actually pushing this up because this news is so old that it just doesn't make any sense. But it just seems like that, to me, just gave me such clarity on this update, triggering plus points for some news sites, because I saw I read somewhere that a lot of these people were seeing news sites also taking hits. So you either went up or went down. But to see something like this, kind of made me, step back and wonder, does Google have that algorithmic, display? Like, there's the knowledge panel. Do they also have something that requires one negative piece of news and one positive piece of news? Because it seems to be dancing around everything I'm doing.
That's an interesting theory. Dr. P, what do you think?
We don't look at it at scale, at the kind of granularity. I could talk about that. But yeah, we've seen that with some, on the flip side, like if everything looks good, there's something a little suspicious about it, right? Like if you're manipulating reviews or you're manipulating your PR, that's what's going to happen. So I know there's been speculation about that. I don't look at the data in a way that I'd see that. The news sites have been strange. We've seen kind of some big players. It's hard with the news sites, and that's why we changed how we analyze it, because they move a lot. They move day to day. But we saw some big players like Wall Street Journal and CNN move up a healthy amount over the course of a week. And then we saw a lot of niche players like Motley Fool took a big hit, and they're getting into those YMYL niches that some of those smaller players that have done really well in the past, but that I think have kind of slipped in quality over time, and it's never caught up with them. It sort of seems, I shouldn't pick on them, but I used to read Motley Fool a lot, and I thought they were really great, and let's be honest, I don't think they're so great anymore. I think they're a little more spammy than they used to be. And so it feels like I look at that list and there's some players that kind of have slowly declined over time, and it sort of caught up in this update. It's hard to tell, though.
All right.
It almost does feel like a news sentiment or a news quality piece in play, and yeah.
Well, it's a Reuters it's picked up from Reuters. So.
What I've seen with a whole bunch of my clients is the ones that are doing paid link building were unaffected. And the people who were just counting on natural links and weren't getting many links got hammered. And it seems to be across all sorts of industries.
Really?
So, yeah.
So go buy links this weekend?
Go buy some links from SEO.com.
Oh, no. Well, and that's an interesting point, too.
It's not PBM stuff. It's good, creative, good pitching. Some get turned down, but the usual sites that you could pay to get listed on through somebody, from any link builder. The usual list.
Yeah.
The usual suspect, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting point to have some good and some bad, because I think that what I've seen in some kind of featured snippets, problematic featured snippets, is you can make something up out of whole cloth, and because no one else has written about it, it becomes a featured snippet. So the example I use is someone, if you type in, used to be, not anymore obviously, but if you typed in, is Obama planning a coup when he was the president, there was a featured snippet and the answer was essentially yes. And the thing is, it was because no one had bothered to write Obama is not planning a coup and is also not an alien and is also not, born with 12 toes or whatever. You can't have a negative for everything to counteract flat out lies. So it's an interesting point to have both sides of a topic be covered to rank it all. That's interesting. All right, I'm going to move us on to the next question because it kind of follows up with something that Lindsay said, which is in her example, the website came back from the dead and then stuck there. And so I wanted to say, now that the update's fully rolled out, we've seen some fluctuation. Do you guys think things have stabilized, or do you think we're going to see kind of things dip and then rebuild? Lily Ray, why don't you take this one?
So just today, I've seen a lot of weirdness. I don't know if anybody else has, but I've seen some pretty big changes and rankings across a couple different sites just today, so I'm going to keep an eye on that. But what makes all of this really challenging right now is that before the core update happened, it was already crazy because of coronavirus. So it's like, as economics change and society changes over the next couple months with people going back to, work or whatever is happening in the world, I think that's going to make it really hard to understand how that's impacting search results, because there's already evidence from during the peak of coronavirus a couple weeks or months ago that the search results were changing really, really erratically, kind of to mirror what people were looking for, or to try to meet people's intent. So I think it's too early to say things are going to stabilize, because I anticipate another couple of weeks or months of unpredictable search behavior.
Aleyda, what do you think?
Yeah. In my case, this was funny, right? Because right after the update was announced, the client that actually was affected the most actually saw an increase. And after those couple of days in increase, they saw a decrease. After it happened, the next 3-4 days, they got stable and they haven't changed since then. I was expecting, and I was actually like very looking forward to see if there was an additional shift, and it was just a few days ago that from the Twitter account of Search Liaison, it was confirmed that the core update was actually finished. But no, I haven't seen since that time like an important shift in rankings in general. It has, for at least to the websites that I have access to, it seems pretty stable at this point, right?
And what are all of you weigh in? What are your thoughts on this? Was this a correction? Was this update like fixing something that went wrong in the last update, or is this a totally separate effort? What do you think?
I think yes.
Yes?
Both. I think there's more than one moving part to this one, at least. I don't know if that's true of the others, but I think this is a mix of some corrections and a mix of the new feeding in this new traffic or whatever happened. I strongly suspect that's retraining, an ML retraining aspect, but that's, we can only guess on that. So I think there were a couple moving parts to this.
Now that you're mentioning it, this is funny because what I have identified in a couple of the really big websites that I have access to, big major marketplaces. So they're ranking for a lot of queries. And in the update of December last year, they actually got a big increase in page views that didn't convert it into clicks, because these were page views generated by positions, position 10, position 9, so they wouldn't get much traffic out of that. The click-through rate was very, very poor. And this website lost a lot in page views, not in clicks, not in traffic, but in page views. If you go to the Google Search Console, you see how it has now decreased. And it's funny because you see going up the page views, going down the page views, the same traffic, the same type of clicks, volume of clicks, realistic, but you can see that there's something shifting at that point at the end of last year in December, that December update, and then again that it changed right now without affecting the traffic at all. So I agree with Pete that there was some sort of update going on regarding the type of changes that at some point were released at the end of last year, probably retraining them with the newer updated type of data that they had after that.
I want to piggyback on what...
You go ahead, Pete. No, go ahead.
I was going to add to what you said, actually, Lily Ray, was just that we've seen the same thing, that there's just also been high flux since March, since around the pandemic announcement, general timeline, that hasn't really settled. So I think the May core update settled probably within 3-4 days. I keep saying June for some reason. For the most part, day one and day two were like two different universes. I don't know why. Like day one meant nothing. Day 2, 3, it kind of settled, but we haven't settled down since like mid-March. Like Mozcast is kind of in the 80s. It's tuned around 70. It doesn't always obey me, but it's tuned to be average around 70, and we've been 15 degrees over since probably mid-March for the most part. So something is happening every day. I mean, SERPs are just changing more than usual. So it's really hard to say what's settled. I think the core update is done, whatever that means, until the next one.
I saw something interesting when comparing the data. Dr. Pete, you have Google Play as one of the biggest winners, and Apple App Store is one of the biggest winners, but Lily Ray, you have Spotify as one of the biggest losers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I should clarify, Pete, I think, is using way, way more domains than I am in your analyses, like maybe thousands more. So mine was specifically...
we saw Spotify lose too.
Okay.
Although it's specifically the open.spotify subdomain, which I think is like when people click on direct song links, I'm not sure. So that was a weird one.
Yeah, there's a couple like music and streaming sites that saw declines.
Yeah, there were actually a lot. I went through your data and found a whole lot of music and streaming sites in the decline. And so I wondered if this might be something that that was missed in the first round of evaluation, that music might be a battleground as well as news here.
Right,
In the statistics analysis in the UK, they show a lot of the music-related ones for the UK, but then it was more health-related in Germany too. It changes per country, it seems. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you would think we'd be listening to more streaming music. So why did?
Yeah, well, another thing too that was interesting was like gyms. Like I have like a fitness category, and some like completely tanked. And generally speaking, those are the gyms where you have to go in person. Like maybe they haven't adapted to offering online classes, but of course the ones that do have a virtual option are seeing big increases in visibility. And that's actually been true for a couple other domains that I've been looking at, like movie theaters, for example, and like Broadway, where they lost a lot of visibility 2-3 months ago when they were closed, but then they started to offer like an online streaming option, and they saw really big increases as a result of that. So it's yet another variable that we have to consider when we're looking at performance.
Well, and Dr. Pete, I think I want to take what you said and reverse it, because you said, well, you would think people would want to be streaming more now with COVID, and I think that they probably do. Like, I think that your questioning of these rankings coming up is assuming that Google is not evil. But if Google were evil, they would want Google Play to pop up to the top if everyone's stuck at home. And they would settle for
Apple.
Like
anything that goes up, did they go up or did everybody else go down, right? Like,
that's true.
I don't know that, right? It's movement, but yeah.
But if it stays this way, then at least from the preliminary data, if this has stabilized this way, then that's a long-term benefit for Google against some of their top competitors. Interesting.
I think
question.
What we really don't know is this a change they made in reaction to what's happening in the world, or is this something that the data caused, or the user behavior caused? And I know I know we don't like to say it. Google says, no, absolutely, searcher behavior doesn't impact the algo. I mean, I think we have to take that as searcher behavior does not impact the algo in real time in a very narrow sense, but the searcher behavior not retrain the algo or I can't believe that's true, at this point, seeing what we're seeing. Like, it has to. This is changing the algorithm somehow.
I totally agree. Does anyone believe that the searcher behavior doesn't impact the algorithm? We have 27 people on here or more. Does anyone believe that?
I got me. I can take it.
Speak up if you have an opinion. All right. That's a winner. We've made a decision.
I think I have an opinion, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm loud and clear, but I work at Pokey, and Pokey is one of the big losers. Also from the statistic data, we lost about 50% of clicks in one day. So they went from like 300,000 US clicks to 150,000. And we had the same thing, like with COVID, people, or our audience are young, school-going people, but with the schools closed, we already saw with COVID that the searches we used to be seeing during the week were much flatter. So there was definitely a different audience due to COVID, and then the algorithm change also hit us very hard.
That's really interesting. Thanks. Yeah, I had seen you in our list and kind of didn't know the site very well and was checking it out. So
yeah, it's maybe interesting to know it's our, like, all the gaming platforms lost about 50% in the US, and that's why the Play Store and the Android Store, they gained our positions.
Right.
So a lot of games are playable online, and that's our territory. And also on as app installs, and they took those positions.
Oh, that's interesting.
All right, I think that's a good
I'm sorry
entry.
to hear that. let me put on my human hat and say that sucks, but I'm sorry to hear that. But the context is interesting to hear.
Yeah.
No, it's super interesting, and I think there are ways to solve this.
Does anyone else have thoughts that they want to share on this one? Because I'm going to show the next question because I think we've kind of led into it nicely, but I want to give you guys a chance to speak up on either question. So the next question is about machine learning and how much do we think machine learning is playing into core updates? Is it more and more? Is it about the same? We talked, a couple people have mentioned resetting and kind of resetting the machine learning. So I want to hear thoughts on that. And I want to start with, Michelle says yes. Michelle, you can talk. I want to start with a concept. I want to prime you guys with a concept that we do in ASO. In ASO, we separate static ranking factors and dynamic ranking factors. And I feel like everything that happens in machine learning is a dynamic ranking factor, and then the static ranking factors are more like your content and your tagging and schema and stuff like that. And, I've always thought of that as the old way, but when you think about the dynamic ranking factors as machine learning, maybe it is the new way, or maybe these things aren't as far apart, and maybe it's a good model for SEO as well as ASO. So, discuss.
One thing that's interesting to me is we've heard Google say, if you see something happen in a core update, if you take a hit in a core update and you fix things, you may not see recovery till the next core update. That suggests retraining to me. That's not Google manually going, those aren't manual penalties, they're not manually going in and making changes. So if that were a real-time thing or purely algorithmic, like why would that not be fixed right away?
That's so brutal to hear.
Yeah.
That you have to wait for a core update. I don't know how much of that, I don't think that's everything, but that sounds like we're not reprocessing the data until the next one. That's what I hear.
It's true.
It's true.
I feel that with my clients. Sometimes it takes 2 core updates to see recovery after the work we're doing, so you have to wait a long time.
Aleyda, what are your Data Studio awesome reports tell us on this one?
Yeah, 100%. It doesn't, like, whatever changes you do, even if they're spot on, the right ones, you don't regain the former type of rankings, performance, visibility that you have previous the update until another one comes. So yes, 100%, I agree.
But they're not on a regular schedule. So how do you tell clients, like, we're just going to have to wait and hope that they do another core update?
So this is the hard thing, right? And it reminds me a little bit with Panda and Penguin when we were all waiting for a big update to happen, right? And and I remember what Penguin in particular, in one case, a client had been previously penalized. They had already cleaned up everything, whatever, and they had been going through so much effort to improve everything, the content, the navigation, everything was amazing at some point, but they were not able to see any change of trend until, for what, a year and a half, the last update happened until it became real time. So it was so hard. So again, at least from my side, what I try to do with clients is to keep them informed that they can see all what has been the cadence and the timings of the previous updates, so they can, and I share also the data that they have had historically also within their own industry, so they have the right expectations. But unfortunately, it is like this. You cannot expect that it takes effect right away, because it doesn't happen. Yeah.
It seems so broken. You would hope that Google could do better than having these janky kind of rollouts.
Well, another thing that's weird too is I have a client that has 8 domains, all in the same category, and the one that we've been actively focusing on and optimizing for a year and saw a lot of big increases with the last 2 updates was negatively impacted this time, and a couple of the domains that they've literally not touched in years saw big increases. And we've seen some similar patterns where, like, sites that I've talked about over the past couple of years is like, this is the ultimate thing you should never do for EAT. Those sites are seeing increases as a result of this update. So it's a little bit frustrating because it's like, maybe we completely misunderstand EAT, but I know for a fact that site is deceiving its users, and suddenly it's seeing increases. So the clients are like, how do you explain that? I'm like, I just don't I don't really have an explanation. I'm sorry.
Michelle, speak up. She said she answered the question in chat. Yes. Tell us why you think yes, Michelle. Michelle was on, is she still here? She was on the Right podcast this morning. Maybe she's dropped off. She just joined in to say hello. Oh, there she is. Oh, there's construction happening at her house. All right, we can't call on Michelle. Does anyone else who's on want to share their own experiences or thoughts on this? I know I see the list of people here, and we have a lot of smart people here. Joe, do you have thoughts? Oh, people are shy.
Hey, I've got one, Cindy.
Yeah.
We've noticed we had a during this whole COVID time and then the update happening and whatnot, we saw kind of a shift in search results for a brick and mortar retailer. They just have locations all over the place. But then after COVID, it seemed like Google started picking up that the intent for these particular home products was more to be. It used to be always, you go to the store and you buy it and you come home and you put it in your house, rather than it just being, hey, somebody that we know will ship it to you. So rather than it being brick and mortars, it kind of shifted to Home Depot, Wayfair, House, all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, was this something that just, the machine learning picked up on? It's like, hey, we know that people aren't going anywhere, so we're going to give them results that are more based off of they're going to get something shipped to them rather than going to a brick and mortar store because it's likely not closed. Or is that something that's going to be, or is it just, you're just getting bullied around by Wayfair and Home Depot and stuff like that? So it's like, well, is the machine learning picking up on the intent and seeing what's more beneficial for users, and is that impacting some updates? I don't know. So that's just one of the observations that we saw recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did a human write a new rule, or did the machine write a new rule? Like, I don't know how we, other than knowing that humans can only write so many rules so fast. Yeah, it's really hard to tell apart.
I actually have an idea on that one. So if we assume that the machine learning is changing over time according to the patterns that people search, and obviously the intent is changing now with coronavirus and with us being stuck at home. And the core update is actually a human going in and kind of cleaning up certain patterns that are not necessarily a major pattern, that just happened because of a specific reality situation. And this is where we see the drops and the ups and downs. And this actually correlates very well with the idea of Spotify dropping, because when the pandemic happened, a lot of people would search for Spotify to download it, and now Google is saying a human goes into the machine learning and they are saying people are looking for Spotify because of a surrounding situation, not necessarily because they're the best offer, and we want to give a fair chance to everybody else as well. So I think that maybe the way it works is the machine learning. So the human behavior doesn't change the algorithm, but it changes the machine learning understanding of the world and what is valuable to humans. And from there, a person needs to go in and start searching on, start fixing stuff that are kind of like, we gave you too much information on that and you think that that's way too valuable than actually it is.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because that's like, there's a ton of layers where, sorry, I'm picking up back up for some reason. Now you have probably this machine learning layer that's, some things are changing every day at a small scale. There's retraining that has to be done at a big scale every once in a while. But then there's the humans going in and saying, oh crap, the machine overdid it. The machine over-indexed on all that new traffic, and we got to adjust it back down. And so, as it changed in May, like, did they go in and say, uh-oh, the machine got a little too happy with Spotify, because Spotify was getting all this new traffic. I'm totally speculating here. We got to dial that back, right? Like, yeah, that's super interesting. And I don't know how we, I don't know how we separate all that.
Yeah, but it also begs the question.
I don't even know if Google knows how to separate it all, right? Like,
it also begs the question: was this core update pre-planned, or was it a response? Because the cadence, doing one in December, January, and doing another one right now, right in the middle of a pandemic, it wasn't a nice time just to do it for funsies, but if it was fixing something that was important to the pandemic, or especially time relevant now, then maybe they had to do it. What do you guys think? Do you think it was pre-scheduled or a response?
There's been some pretty interesting data on just how much pandemic traffic changes have screwed up machine learning algorithms, like just how the shifts they've just really over-indexed on it. So I think that's a really interesting idea that maybe Google didn't have any choice. Maybe they had to go in to some extent and go, we got to fix this. It went a little crazy.
Donna Snow just agreed with you in the chat. Donna, tell us. She doesn't want to be on. She just says she agrees with you, Dr. Pete.
From us. Come on, we're all friends. It's okay. It's Friday. I got Legos all over my office, No shame.
Michelle says she thinks it was planned, so she disagrees. But she still won't talk because of construction. Okay, I feel like I'm going to move to the next question. This is a series.
Very well could be a little of both, too, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it probably is a little bit of both, as it usually is. Okay, so then next question, and my slide isn't advancing, but the next question is, why do you think we need these core updates? Why doesn't Google do a better job of smoothing out the release of an update so that it's harder for us to do winners and losers and harder for us to pick out what's changed? It seems like they could throttle the machine learning to take a slower effect. And I wonder about that. They're so sophisticated that you would think they could smooth this out and make it less of a rocky road, and then all the SEOs would complain less. Anyone have thoughts on that, or is that just me thinking about that?
I suspect some things are just hard.
Yeah,
things are just big.
I was going to say, I think it has to do with the process that they're using. So, they're using these search quality raters, they're conducting thousands of experiments, and another thing that they look at, and if you guys haven't read Glenn Gabe's article about the core updates, I really recommend it because he talks a lot about this process, but they say that they can't do them any more frequently. It really does take this long to evaluate and incorporate all the information that they get from those user tests, and also that they want to see a long-term evidence of improvements on websites. So one thing that's really interesting in Glenn's article is that he says if you've been making a lot of updates to your site in the last 2 weeks before a core update rolls out, you're not necessarily going to see the impacts of the work that you've done over the past couple of weeks in that evaluation of your domain. Google's looking for that long-term history of what you've been doing, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't know that.
Dave, you just popped up on my screen. What do you think?
Well, I tend to think of this, and maybe this is a little bigger than just this one core, but more like this is how nerdy I am, more like a Borg scenario, where you have all these little drones running around as algorithms, getting stuff sorted out, but there's a queen, and every now and then the queen needs to get back in that outfit. So that's really the nerdiest analogy I think I've ever used, but every now and then you got to repair what's under the hood, right? Actually get in there and replace the engine, not just tinker with the parts. And I think that's what we see when we see core updates kicking in. It's just okay, something is fundamentally at the part of the algorithm that is figuring out how to calculate the other algorithm. That's what needs to be changed now. And I think that's what we're seeing when we see cores is the part that controls the other parts actually needs to be updated.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I like that explanation, and I like that there's a queen instead of a king. That's. Anyone else have thoughts that they want to share? Aleyda? Anyone? Nobody? We can go on. I have only one more question, and then it's a free-for-all. Let's see if it's going to work. So the next and final question is, what's next with engagement as the pre-announced update? What do you guys think? What are you concerned about? What are you happy about? What are you looking forward to? Those kinds of questions.
Yeah, so I am actually, I have to say, in my case, I'm very looking forward to see what happens with it, because until now, it's not that they hadn't taken speed into consideration, right? Or mobile friendliness or intrusive pop-ups or interstitials, right? They have. But right now, I think at least from a communication perspective, it's much more clear that they're trying to unify the user experience, the page experience that they're calling it, right? To be taken into consideration as a one metrics, to combine it all. Now also with the new core web vitals metrics that we can all measure in a much more straightforward way too, and they are also offering the metrics across many more tools in a consistent way to make it much more straightforward. I like it because, as we all know, it's much more harder to have influence in those areas than the typical SEO base type of areas like crawlability, indexability, relevance. Whenever you were trying to do something regarding user experience or navigation or the performance, it's much more harder, less straightforward, more sophisticated, so you have less influence there. And then on the other hand, what I also liked from the comments that I got yesterday when I had the opportunity to ask the team who was in charge of the change is that since they want to measure really the experience of the user with the page, for example, if a website has an AMP version, even a non-canonical one, right? A one that is canonicalized into a URL, a page that which the experience is not the best for it, and the speed is very, very slow. The speed and the metrics and everything is going to be taken into consideration from the page that the user actually sees. So in this particular case, if the user sees on mobile the AMP version, it will be from that AMP alternate page. So yes, again, I am seeing that they are less tied or focused on only the bot related factors, but more from a user experience type of interaction and the metrics that they can obtain from that. So I like it.
I think they learned with the HTTPS update that pre-announcing this kind of thing moves people much more than an algo update does, with less collateral damage. Like, it's a pressure move. Like, look, your rankings are going to be affected later. Do this now. And we do.
I think it's so much nicer. Because they did it. I think it's so much nicer of them. Like, they have the ability to communicate to us.
We can game. These are things we can't. I don't want to say we can't game. I'm sure we'll find. Sure we'll get creative. But it's like HTTPS. If everybody switched to HTTPS for SEO, like just for SEO, who cares? From Google's perspective, who cares? If we all stop all the things from jumping around our screen and the ads from zooming in from the side while it's loading for SEO, great. They don't care. So if we game it, go ahead. Make your site faster to game the system. Whatever, all the sites will be faster, right?
Yeah, but realistically, regarding that, I also like that they also confirm that they are going to be pre-announcing this from now forward. That is not that they are pre-announcing it today, but the core web vitals will be yearly metrics, or by every year, and they will provide them. Yes, and every year they might change depending on the user behavior and what they consider that they can measure for that in order to identify the user experience. And so we can expect that this are going to be announced every year, if they are going to change or not, how they are going to change, in order to give enough time to people to prepare. So yes, that's nice.
I think it's great that they're super specific, right? It's not like build a better user experience. I mean, that's laser. It's pretty clear, right? Like,
Yeah, it's really nice for us because it's these are the types of things that we recommend to our clients all the time, and butt heads with people and their teams that want to run ads and they want to run interstitials and they want to have the page move around a lot and all this stuff. And so we can finally say this is a confirmed ranking factor. It's going to impact your performance. So that gives us a little bit more teeth. But what I thought was interesting for the update too was like the fact that they are now no longer requiring AMP for top stories. What's that all about? What was the motive behind that?
You know what? It's the thing. I really do believe this because they got a lot of backlash from this since AMP was released, right? And I remember asking them a couple of years ago why it was like a real requirement, why the requirement wasn't about a threshold and the speed of the page instead. And the argument that I got at that point is that it was very difficult for them to assess that in real time for whatever page that was relevant to be shown at that point. So I guess that we are at the stage where they have been able to sort that out, and it makes complete sense that indeed a technology is not a requirement, but the actual experience that you get from the page. And it was interesting also because there was this question, right? If there's going to be any minimum metric level that a page will need to comply with or to have in order to be shown in the carousel or not. So I think that in the mind of the people is very stuck of yes or no. It has a good performance or not. It's able to be there or worthy to be there or not. But they say no, that any page, if it is relevant and comply with the rules, policies to be included in the carousel as a news related site, is sensible to be there. And of course, the page experience is going to be as an additional signal into that mix, and that's it. Yeah.
Anyone else have thoughts that they want to share on this topic? Donna, she just keeps going into the chat. She's agreeing. Okay. All right. I think this has been an excellent test for a first roundtable, and I want to thank everyone for showing up, and I want to give you guys the opportunity to kind of sum up or tell us where to reach you or do whatever you want to do to talk to everyone else. And let's start with Lily Ray.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun. I'm going to be speaking at the SEJ Summit next Tuesday and also DJing at night for the after party. So you guys should come to that because that'll be really fun. And just follow me on Twitter. It's Lily Ray NYC.
Dr. Pete.
I think everything's a hot mess, and I hope it gets better for everybody. And yeah, find me on Twitter, and MozCon's going virtual in mid-July, so we'll hope you join us there.
All right, Aleyda.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think this is a very nice way to finish my week, and well, I will say week, but actually tomorrow, Saturday, somehow I still have another thing. But yes, to my Friday at least to go to bed in a bit. So thank you very much for having me. I really enjoy it a lot. I'm very looking forward also to see everybody in the Search Engine Journalist Summit. I'll be there also talking about e-commerce for international websites.
All right.
If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. To be notified about future videos, click the logo. And to try the MobileMoxie Mobile SEO Toolset, use the promo code YouTube to get 30 days free. They're mobile-first SEO tools for a mobile-first world.